So in the second part of the evening, we're going to ask each of the candidates to address the questions which you have written on entry and also sent by email before the event. And there are a number of topics which we receive more than one question. So we're going to aggregate some of the questions, consolidate them so that people don't have to actually answer the same question many times. So in aggregate, really the question that cropped up most frequently amongst the questions posed by the audience here tonight were to do with climate change and climate change policies. So I'd like to ask each of the candidates what they see as their party's response to climate change and what would be their priorities should they get elected.
Thank you for the question. Now look, I'm an electrical contractor, I'm not a climatologist, but this is my personal views. It's nothing to do with the Farmer United Party. I believe that we are polluting the air. We have to do something about it. What we can do, I don't know, but we have to, as Peter was saying from the Greens, we have to get sustainable energy up and running. We have to start looking after the environment. How we'll do it, I don't know. That's going to be up to the scientists. But I totally disagree with Tony Abbott. He doesn't believe that there is a problem, that there must be a problem. And if there wasn't, why should we not anyway get rid of all the pollutants that we put into the air? We've got the technology to do it. We only have to put in scrubbers for coal-fired power stations. And coal-fired power stations, I know a little bit about, they're 98% pollutant-free because all the scrubbers that are in the exhaust systems take away most of the chemicals and pollutants. But yeah, I would like to see more solar panels. I think that the government should be sponsoring more of them. Most families can't afford to put panels on the roof. It should be something that should be introduced for all new homes, should have solar panels built into them. We should have insulated homes, which we do anyway. But yeah, that's all I can really say on it. But yeah, I'm all for fixing the environment. But as I said, I'm an electrical contractor. I'm not a scientist, so I need to leave it to the experts. But yes, there is a problem and we've got to fix it. Thank you.
I'm sorry about this, but I'm a climate skeptic, and one of the people that I look up to is Lord Christopher Monckton. I watched the debate that he had with Bob Brown's former Chief of Staff, and I think Lord Christopher Monckton won that debate quite easily. And Lord Christopher Monckton's knowledge on the subject is quite good. But it's amazing how this is used to divert on the economy and how America is basically nearly with the derivatives crisis over in America and the financial collapse that's happening in Europe and the rest of the world. This is just something that was a smokescreen to sort of get people away from the real issue of whether or not we're going to have an economy, whether or not we're going to have a future for our children and our grandchildren. And the way things are going with the financial mess, this is just a smokescreen to try and divert attention from the real issues. I can see Liberal and Labor shipping out jobs overseas. We don't make anything anymore. Those are the issues that I address. But to do with this is just it's just a smokescreen. And climate change is a completely natural thing. It's not caused by human activity at all. And I will continue to be a climate skeptic, and you can see that the carbon tax and all that, it's blowing up in the Labor Party and the Greens' face. So that's my opinion.
It is of the opinion of the Australian Sex Party and of myself that the climate change is very real, and we do need to do something about it. We really don't have enough information on it, but it's definitely not a case of this is a natural succession. We've cut down too many trees and haven't planted anything back. So it's from 200 years ago, from reading some of the early settlers, there was a dew in summertime. There's a dew point in the air, and we don't have a dew point now. There's no such thing as a dew point, and that isn't the case for 200 years. That is a dramatic change in the environment, and we do need to look at stabilising it and reversing it. That's all I can say.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm going to have to disagree with Daniel. I think it's pretty clear, and it has been for 20 years, that climate change is real and it's being caused by humans, and there's lots of evidence for that. I think some people might have heard a couple of months ago a study came out saying that if the Arctic melted, it would cost the global economy $60 trillion. So when we talk about climate change, it's not just about protecting the environment, but it is about protecting the economy as well. One of the issues which has been ignored in the debate so far is the health implications. Lancet, one of the most prestigious health journals, came out a couple of years ago and said climate change is the biggest health issue of the 21st century. So, and also, I guess some of the comments Daniel made about it's going to ruin our economy and jobs, I think are completely ill-founded, because in reality it's not a question of jobs versus climate change. Addressing climate change will create a lot more jobs. More jobs, local jobs are created per kilowatt hour in renewable energy versus fossil fuels, coal and gas. The Greens policy, Scott Ludlam's done quite a detailed report with Sustainable Energy Now, looking at could the southwest grid be powered by 100% renewable energy by 2029. The conclusions of the study were yes, and they found it would cost only slightly more than business as usual, mainly using concentrated solar thermal, which has salt storage, so you can get 24-hour power even when the sun isn't shining, and also wind backed up with some biomass generation in the regions. So it's actually really good for regional areas and can create jobs in towns like the Weipa, where Colgar Wind Farm has been just finished. Thanks.
Addresses one of the hot topics in this election, which is the treatment of asylum seekers who wish to come to or who attempt to come to Australia by boat. We'd like to ask the candidates, what's your view on how they should be treated? Should they be sent offshore, or should they be processed in Australia, or should they be processed in advance? What's your party's view or your own view on this matter?
So people probably know the Greens have been very strong on the refugee issue, and we believe that we should take a more caring approach. Something that changed my view on this several years ago, my dad's a doctor here in Midland, he's a rheumatologist. He came home and told me how he'd had a patient with a terrible shoulder, and he was examining it and it was completely stuffed, and he said, "Oh, what did you do?" And the gentleman then said, I was strung up by my arm and tortured for several days. So that story changed my view profoundly on this subject. At the moment, the two major parties seem to think that the crueler you are, we can stop people from coming. But unless we're going to be more cruel than the conditions people are facing overseas, it will not act as a deterrent. The Greens policy is to resource the UNHCR in Indonesia and overseas to do their job so they can process people over there, and to immediately increase the refugee intake to 30,000 people with emergency intake of 3,500 people to relieve pressure in Indonesia, where there are literally thousands of people stuck there with no orderly queue, with nowhere to go. So if we accept them and show that there is a process, it'll stop people from getting on boats and risking their lives, which no party wants to see.
The opinion of the Australian Sex Party and myself is that all people, regardless, have the right to live and not be oppressed, and mandatory detention is oppression of people's rights, and so we're against it. And we also feel that the influx of refugees is probably better to actually look at the source of the problems and try and deal with the source of the problems rather than just deal with the backlash. Thank you.
My mother's parents, they came out on a boat, and they came from Scotland, and they had the choice between Canada, America, New Zealand and Australia, and they came to Australia. So we've got to remember that this country was founded by both people, and we need to be compassionate towards genuine refugees. And I'm not xenophobic or anything. I think a lot of Australians can be a bit xenophobic, and that's not a good thing to be. And we need to treat people like human beings and not cattle. But that's my opinion on it. Thank you.
My opinion is that the people who are coming in boats are so desperate to get here with their wives and their children that they're prepared to die to get here. That shouldn't be happening. One way we could curb the boat problem is to allow the people to come here with a passport. They need a passport to get to Indonesia, and I don't understand why they destroy them. But if we can allow them to come here without a visa, we have to get rid of this visa block that's stopping them. They could arrive at Perth, Melbourne or Sydney, wherever, and they could be assessed within 24 hours if they have the proper documentation. If they are genuine refugees, then they'll be able to stay. If they're not, then they'll be shipped straight back to where they came from. At the moment, these people are desperate. They're just in such agony to improve their lifestyles. But if they're going to come on a boat with no identification, we have to be careful who is coming into the country. I'm not suggesting that they're moving an army in, but that could happen. If they want to come, they have to realise that if Papua New Guinea is what they're going to be offered, then they have to accept that. Papua New Guinea is a lot closer than Indonesia. Maybe Tony Abbott might end up buying all the boats in Papua New Guinea, I don't know. But anyway, I am not against the refugees. I'm quite happy to welcome them here, but I do want to know who's coming in. Thank you.
So it has been suggested that there should be recognition of the Aboriginal Australians in the Constitution. What's your view on that? And also, what is your view on whether there is any other special programs that the federal government should be engaging in order to improve the lot of Indigenous Australians?
As far as being recognised in the Constitution, that's a foregone conclusion. There is no question about that. These people were here before us, and they should be recognised. I've got great respect for the Aborigines. I've been involved in the mining industry now for over 30 years, mainly in the Midwest. I've been involved in many Aboriginal communities around Walloona and Meekatharra and Mount Augusta. I've got friends who are Aborigines. I think they do a great job. I do feel sorry that so much money is being spent on the Aborigines, but it's not getting down to the grassroots level. Also, some of the Aborigines, and I don't want you to misunderstand me here, some of the Aborigines are getting too much help. They don't have to go to work. They feel that the pension is enough, and I'm talking about the young ones. They're quite happy to live on the pension. And once you've been on a pension for a couple of years, it becomes a way of life, because that's what it was like in my home country. That's why my parents brought me here, because there was nothing, there was no future. I was on the scrap heap when I was 16. Now when I go home for a holiday, I see guys the same age as me, 60, who have never had a job. They've just been quite happy to just toddle along on a pension. We have to help the Aborigines. I feel as if we are helping them, but we have to get people like Dr. Isaac to get out there and tell the people that they also have to help themselves. Clontarf is a perfect example. The young guys in there and the women are doing a wonderful job, and I just hope that they continue doing that. But Aborigines, they're a very proud people. They're one of the most kindest people that I've ever met. And that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Yeah, look, I don't have a problem with Aboriginals being recognised in the Constitution, and my party in WA wants to actually start an Aboriginal working group committee in our party for WA and try and outreach to as many Aboriginal people as possible. So I do agree with Robert that there is an Aboriginal welfare crisis because there are a lot of, not just Aboriginal girls, but other girls as well that go out, get pregnant, have babies, and just are on welfare. And it's a crisis because it's actually getting bigger and bigger. I think the welfare debt now is $132 billion, and it's increasing all the time. And Labor and Liberal aren't solving it. The problem's getting bigger, and when it gets bigger and bigger, it's just going to end up blowing up in our face. So we need to realise that when these girls go out and have children, they need to be responsible, have a job, and hang on, excuse me, I'm talking, you can ask me a question after about my opinion. But as I said to you before, we need to, there's an old saying, if you teach a man how to fish, you feed him for a day. If you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. If you teach a man how to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. And that's what we need to do with Aboriginal people. That's what Katter's party is committed to. We want a national bank to get infrastructure going and to get jobs in Australia, and we want to make things in Australia, and that's what we stand for. Thank you.
The question was, should we recognise Aboriginals in the Constitution? My answer is yes.
Yes, likewise, the Greens have been very supportive of recognising the first Australians in the Constitution, and it was a shame to see that just before the election that I think there was tri-party sort of work on leading towards that, and that was then used as a political football when Rudd came back in. So I also like to highlight that now, because of the work of Senator Rachel Seward, a Green Senator in WA in particular, that there's going to be non-sniffable fuels in all across all of remote Australia. And I think in the future, in terms of policies, the Greens, as I mentioned, our Justice Reinvestment program, we need to look at supporting things like night basketball and patrol that can, and parenting programs that can help people. Contrary to the previous speaker's assertions, I think it's ridiculous to suggest that people are just bludgeoning on welfare. The reality is that New Start is 50% is below the 40% below the poverty line. So people who end up on benefits are just stuck in a poverty trap. The Greens have released a costed policy, again Rachel Seward's work, to say that we would increase New Start by $50 a week, and we would also add $40 a week for single parents who are currently unable to, who also got dumped onto New Start by Julie Gillard. Senator Scott Ludlow, our Green Senator who's up for re-election, just released last week social housing initiatives, looking at building 100,000 houses over the next 10 years in Australia, and so I think also providing housing for people that are waiting on housing lists for up to 10 years is important.
The next question is one which is responded to differently by the two major parties contending this election, and that is the National Broadband Network. What's your view on the National Broadband Network? A, should there be one at all? And secondly, should it be fibre to the house, fibre to the nodes? So fibre to the node means that the very fast internet conduit will reach to a place in your street, somewhere not far from your house, hopefully. Fibre to the house says that it will make it all the way to your house, so you'll get very fast broadband speeds into your house, which can increase quite dramatically as technology progresses. Whereas if it's just to the node, then you have copper to your house, and we already know the limits of copper in conveying broadband. So that's why there is a debate about what's the right thing to do.
So this is an area Scott Ludlam's also been very proactive on, and he's been, with the Greens support the NBN, and we were involved in trying to improve that package, the design. And I know that just last week the Australian Digital Frontiers, or a digital group, released their assessment, independent assessment of the different parties on their digital platform, and the Greens were ranked equally best on that in terms of protecting privacy online and the NBN project. I think there has been criticism of it, saying it's costing too much, but the reality is it is infrastructure for the future, and it will be important in low carbon economy of the future that people are able to make transactions and businesses and medical things online. So yes, I definitely support that.
So this is actually just my personal belief. It should actually be fibre to the house.
I'm fully in support of it, but my only objection is that this is if this is the Greens' big massive infrastructure project. I don't think the Greens are very good at infrastructure. Our infrastructure project is building dams, railways, power plants, and getting the economy moving. And I mean, the broadband is just a little side issue. Getting people employed into building bridges, railways, power plants, dams. We haven't built a dam in nearly 20 years, and West Australia's population is increasing, and Liberal and Labor aren't doing anything about it. West Australia is growing in population. We haven't built a dam in 20 years. And what has Senator Scott Ludlam and Senator Steve Worth done to solve that? I haven't heard them talking about building a dam, because I've got an old saying: to solve the water crisis, dam it. And that's so. My opinion on this broadband issue is that it's not as important as major infrastructure projects. So that's what I'm all about. Thank you.
Yeah, it would be nice to build some more dams, but unfortunately we haven't anything to put in them. Just going on to the national broadband, I think that Australia, like any modern first world country, we should embrace technology. My personal belief is that we should take it to the node, because the broadband I've got at the moment is copper, and I'm quite happy with it. I don't need it to be instant. On my opening address, I mentioned about the hundreds of billions of dollars that have been squandered. Well, the national broadband is one of them. Somebody came up with a figure of 42 billion. And I can assure you, we've nearly spent that, and we're only got about 2% of it in the ground at the moment. The national broadband is like a beached whale, and all the contractors working on this job are like white pointer sharks. They're taking big chunks out of it, because the contractors did not have to quote to do the installation. The government couldn't even get the tendering documents correctly. They didn't put out a proper scope of works, because number one in the scope of works, because this is the type of work I do, the number one scope of works should have said, check that the ground boxes are not made of asbestos. Now, a crazy person could tell you these boxes have been in the ground for 40 or 50 years. Of course they're asbestos. But no, the government goes ahead, awards these contracts, and then once they've been running for a couple of months, somebody puts their hand up and says, oh, the boxes are asbestos. Now, most of it is stopped. The installation is stopped. They're now trying to figure out what they're going to do. But yes, the national broadband has to go ahead, but it should stop at the node. If you really want super high broadband, then you should pay for that. It's not a big installation from the node to your house. It might cost you $1,000. If you're really that keen, then you pay the money. Thank you.
The next question relates to changing demographics, which we are seeing in all developed countries where the population is gradually aging. And one of the situations we have at the moment is that the people who are supporting aged people, as in their carers, are generally living on very low incomes, often below the poverty line. So how does your party see its response to this potential crisis of an aging population with fewer people in work, supporting a larger number who need care?
Our United Party is going to give pensioners $150 a fortnight extra so they can buy some food and pay their electricity bill. They're also going to increase the carers' pension by $150 a fortnight also. We are an ageing population. We're going to have problems in the next 20 to 30 years. But with medicine progressing at the rate it's going at the moment, hopefully a lot of the conditions that are affecting elderly people at the moment, we may have a cure for that. But it's necessary that today we have to look after the carers. There's quite a few times that the carer has passed away due to the stress and the hard work involved in looking after one of their loved ones. We have to look after all people, and the way we can do this is through giving them financial aid and also making more jobs available in the industry. I know people who work in the industry, the home carers, and they have to work very, very hard for very, very little. So with the unemployment the way it is now, if we could get a decent wage for the people in that industry, we would encourage more people to take up the opportunity to help the aged.
To do with the ageing and the poverty of the pensioners and that, I sort of like to fight the money power. The four major banks, as I said, are investing in derivatives. They're commercial banks and investment banks, and I don't believe they should be allowed to do those two functions. And I also am strongly, I think, a national bank of credit, or what Bob Catter calls a redevelopment bank, is going to... Yeah, I'm talking about that. Is what's really going to help this country. So that's my opinion about it.
I actually don't have a current opinion on this one at the moment. I really do need to have a lot more research and actual data before I make an informed decision.
We are facing an ageing population, the baby boomers, and I think more broadly we need to have a discussion about how we live our lives. I heard recently a suggestion that when we're young and perhaps my age and we've got kids, people are working long hours and not getting, they want to work less to spend more time with their kids, but as people age and their kids have left, they actually want to continue working, and at the moment there's a lot of older people that want to work, and there's ageism in the workplace, there's discrimination and they're not allowed to. The Greens have released some policies to support training and employers to allow people to work longer in the workforce. The federal government did release the Living Stronger, Living Better package about aged care reform recently, and the Greens believe that was a good start, and we were important in the Senate in adding amendments to that. But I think there is still further reforms to do. Some of the things the Greens would like to see is dental care for all Australians as part of Medicare. And as a priority, we'd like, if we're re-elected, we're going to be pushing strongly for dental care, not just to be for children, but for older Australians as a priority, and then all Australians as part of Medicare, and also as the NDI, part of the NDIS, the National Disability Insurance Scheme. The Australians moved an amendment to ensure that over 65s were included in that. Labor and the Coalition didn't support us on that, but we will be pushing for that in the future. And also, I think it's important to assist people to age at home, and part of that Living Stronger, Living Better package is money to allow people different choices in how they want to live.
And this is another hot topic which relates environmental concerns with primary industry, in particular mining, and that is the question of fracking and exploiting coal seam gas. What's your party's view on this topic, and what would you seek to do about it, either to allay public concern or to actually enact restrictions on this particular process?
Yep. So not surprisingly, the Greens are anti-fracking. We've been campaigning strongly against this. Our policy, I believe, is to implement a moratorium until we know more about this. And it's great to see this election and recently over East is that the Greens have formed unlikely alliances with farmers, because we're one of the only party that are actually standing up for their rights, supporting the Lock the Gate movement, and supporting farmers on prime agricultural land to say, no, we don't want to destroy this land for a few short years of gas wells that may only last 5-10 years. Earlier in the year I did do some research into fracking, and there are a lot of question marks. Research is only now just coming out of the US because the industry's only been going 10 or 15 years. A lot of concerns about well cases cracking, will they leak, and so I think there are a lot of question marks there, and we should have a moratorium in WA at the moment. The state Liberal government, Colin Barnett, is trying to steamroll this through, and part of the reason they'd like to develop James Price Point is the Canning Basin and the Kimberley is the 5th largest unconventional gas reserve in the world. They'd like to drill over 100,000 wells in the Kimberley to provide gas to process at James Price Point and send that offshore. which is not only bad for the Kimberley and the environment there in those communities, but it's also terrible in terms of climate change. Only 2 or 3% of that methane gas leaks, it is then no longer any cleaner than burning coal. So it's simply not a solution in terms of climate change either. Thank you.
It's on my personal opinion that the fracking actually should be put on hold until proper environmental studies are actually being put into it. I'm pretty sure that the environmental studies are going to say it is detrimental. So I would like to see it just get a permanent hold on it.
Canada's Australian Party is against fracking, it's against coal steam gas, and we've done everything in our power to try and stop it over in Queensland. It's another point that both Liberal and Labor are quite willing to sell Australia out to the multinationals for the highest price, because what happened in Queensland, Anna Bligh nearly bankrupted the state, and she started this coal steam gas. Newman took over and he just continued it, and we tried our best to try to stop coal steam gas in Queensland, and it's we've been in an uphill battle, and I've actually been in contact with Ray Hopper, who's the Queensland state leader of Canada's Australian Party in the Queensland Parliament, and yeah, they're starting to do coal steam gas near schools, near where people live, and it's very difficult because in the Queensland Parliament, LNP has 74 seats, Labor has 7, Katter is 3, Clive Palmer is 2, and there's 3 independents. So the LNP have got a massive landslide, and they can do anything they want, including coal steam gassing, austerity packages, and the whole lot. So LNP equals death, doesn't it?
Mark, I think you mentioned something about the mining industry and its pollutants. Well, being involved in the mining industry for over 30 years, I can assure you that any mine operating in the Murchison area in the Midwest does not do any polluting unwittingly. Every mine site has employed full-time environmentalists, usually a green supporter, and they do a very good job. If we spill any oil or any chemicals, there's a full inquiry to find out why it happened and make sure it doesn't happen again. So I would give the mining industry a gold stamp and a smiley face as far as pollutants go. As far as fracking goes, Palmer United Party's only been established now for 3 months, and I'll be honest, I don't know how they stand on that. So what I say now is a personal point of view. We've got so much gas that we can't get rid of it. Why would we want to go and start fracking when we get more gas coming out of the ground? We're shipping thousands of millions of litres of it every year. There's no reason why we have to stuff up the land by fracking. So fracking might be something that's required maybe 500 or 1,000 years from now, when we've got better control and better understanding of the environment and how the earth works. But as far as fracking goes, my personal opinion is no.